Horatius Bonar and Charles Spurgeon. What's your conclusion here?
Well, yes, I did that purposely. Augustine, again, you read him. You have to really go back before him with Chrysostom. Chrysostom was really rabidly anti-Semitic. What he says about the Jews is quite disgusting. Then you have immediately followed by Augustine. Augustine says, don't kill the Jews, just suppress them, sort of keep them under your heel, and there they'll be a humiliated witness to the fact that they have crucified the Messiah and so forth. Now, you don't get any real love by Augustine for the Jews. He believed they'd eventually be converted at the end of the age, but that's to be absorbed then into the church. They lose their identity. Calvin is a little softer. He's not as bad. Yet, nevertheless, you read his Institutes, you'll find a man who's just totally given over to Augustine. And I believe even Calvin, when he was in Geneva, the Jews were pushed out of Geneva. So when you read the tone of Augustine and Calvin, you'll read, at best, absolutely best, just a tolerance. But again, for Calvin, of course, the church has become the new Israel. So again, now the Jew really will be passé, you see. Now, when you read Horatius Bonar and you read C.H. Spurgeon, you've only got to read the quotes. You'll find a totally different attitude. You'll find a tenderness and a warmth and a hope. Even Ryle's the same too. But Bonar and Spurgeon, just read them. You'll find they don't believe God's finished with the Jew or the land. They're going to go back. They're going to believe in Christ as their Messiah. And eventually, when Christ returns, then he will reign over them distinctly, and then there'll be the surrounding Gentile nations. It's a matter of contrasting tone, and it's quite obvious, I think.
Going back to something that you just had commented on about they don't believe that God is through with the Jew. I don't think I've ever heard an amillennialist or postmillennialist say that God is through with Jews.
Well, you read my book and you'll read it. I'll give you two examples. You've got Albertus Peters, who is very well known as a classic Dutch Reformed writer, and you can read the quotes there. A more recent one would be Bettner, Lorraine Bettner. Now, Bettner has written a book called The Reformed Doctrine of Predestination. That's an excellent book. I have been blessed by that myself. But he writes another book, and it's called The Millennium. And I can quote you several writers, not just myself, who say that Bettner's comments there are blatant anti-Semitism. So, you know, I've got those two. They're in the book, so there they are. And there's others as well. Some, I would add this, I would say this, that others are less vociferous. They are less openly anti-Israel in an anti-Semitic sense. But nevertheless, when it comes down to the bottom line, they just say God's finished with them nevertheless.
Well, I have heard, obviously, that from those camps, amillennial and some postmillennial, that God is no longer dealing with them as a nation or giving them most favored nation status.
Right.
But I at least in contemporary Reformed, amillennial and postmillennial circles, I haven't heard that God is through with the Jews. Especially, obviously, postmillennialists have a great optimistic vision of the future for the Jews.
Okay, let's take the end there and deal with it first. You're quite right. When you get to classic postmillennialists, then I would agree with you. Indeed, in the appendices, I have an appendices on Jonathan Edwards, who is postmillennial. And when you read there, you'll see very clearly. Now, although he's postmillennial, in terms of the issue of the book, he is very much, basically of the same opinion as I am. He describes Christ will be back in Jerusalem, the Jews will be there, they'll be converted, of course, and then surrounding Israel will be the converted Gentile nations, So he is a post-millennialist, Now, there's another issue raised there, and it's true, and I found this. John Murray and others say, well, there's going to be a mass conversion of the Jews, but what you get here is a division. They say, oh, yeah, well, the Jews will be converted. When you raise the question, has God still got a covenant interest in the Jews today? They even hedge on that. Then you ask, has God got a covenant interest in the nation? Has God got a covenant interest in the land? Then they hedge on that entirely. Now, my point would be that when you're dealing with Jews, You can't divide them up like that. In the French National Assembly at the end of the 19th century, when there was a move for great freedom of belief in France, there was a famous statement, and it came out this way. It said, everything to the Jews as individuals and nothing to them as a nation or as a land. Well, biblically, that is quite absurd. You know, it's like saying, you're an American, I respect you for that, but you don't have a nation, you know, and you don't have a land. I mean, that's absurd. So sometimes people say, oh, they speak of Jews very glibly, and in the book I get people to try and say, wait a minute, what do you mean by Jew? Mm-hmm. I think it has ethnic, national, and territorial meaning, all combined into one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to go to a break right now. If you'd like